For those in the room that don't know me, I'm Major Jeff Cotner. That's C-O-T-N-E-R. I command the Violent Crimes section of the Crimes Against Persons Division. Today I'm here to give you an update on the officer-involved shooting that occurred on August 20th at 11:44 p.m. at 7921 LBJ Freeway, and that would be in the rear parking lot of the Grand Hotel. Earlier today, the department released the suspect's name. His name is Terrence Michael Grossel. He's a white male, 8/24/61. Mr. Grossel was 52. That's Grossel. Mr. Grossel, he had been in TDC for an offense in 1995 in which he was convicted of ag sex assault with a minor. Because of that, Mr. Grossel had a responsibility to register as a sex offender annually. He currently had a warrant, a probation violation for failing to comply with that statute to register as a sex offender. Earlier we also released the names of the officers. I'm going to go back over them again. It's Police Officer Jay Jankowski, Jankowski. Officer Jankowski's been in the department 4 years and 11 months. His partner is Police Officer Michelle Herzeg. I'm going to spell that for you. Herczeg. And Officer Herzeg has been in the department 5 years and 11 months. Both officers are assigned to the North Central Patrol Division, and specifically they are on the crime response team. The incident was captured on in-car video and also video from the Grand Hotel. The description I'm going to give to you is kind of a compilation of our physical evidence. Officer Herzeg gave us a walkthrough, so we have her verbal testimony. She has not been interviewed by the detectives, but we do have her walkthrough testimony, so it's preliminary. And then certainly we have the in-car video from the squad car, and we have the video from the hotel. I mentioned earlier the officers are on a crime response team. The area there at the hotel, on the rear of the hotel, is known to the officers for narcotics trafficking and also the location that stolen vehicles were dropped off. The officers were in full uniform and they were driving a marked squad car patrolling the rear parking lot of the Grand Hotel. They had previously made dispatch aware of their location, so they were on a mark out for routine patrol. Again, and this is a targeted area. The officers observed a blue Chevrolet truck parked with its engine idling. The officers stopped and began to back up behind the truck. The officers believed at the time that this truck may be stolen. Now, the truck is not registered to Grossel, but it's not stolen as well. We still have that truck. It's at our auto pan. The officers stopped and began to back up behind the truck. The brake lights on the truck illuminated momentarily as the officers positioned their squad car behind the truck at an angle and illuminated their overhead lights. So the officers were aware that the truck was occupied before they approached it. The officers intentionally illuminated their overhead lights to let the occupant of the motor vehicle know that there was a marked police helmet and who was behind them. The officers then exited and approached the truck with caution similar to a traffic stop. Officer Jankowski on the driver's side, Officer Herzeg on the passenger side. Officer Herzeg tapped on the passenger window and directed Grossel to lower the window. He leaned forward momentarily and then returned to a seated position. Officer Herzeg then observed Grossel was pointing a pistol towards Officer Jankowski while looking at her. Simultaneously, Officer Jankowski yells, "Gun." Both officers immediately retreat toward their squad car and begin firing their weapons at Grossel. The officers take cover behind the squad car and request backup. Seconds later, Grossel appears to extend his arm outside the truck window toward the officers. A few moments later, a flash is observed in the cab of the truck, and what sounds like a single gunshot is heard by the officers. Backup officers arrive, and a contact team is organized by a sergeant using a ballistic shield to check on Grossel's well-being. Go ahead, Ken. It's okay, buddy. I'll go back over that right there. It's okay. So there's a flash in the cab of the truck. And then the officers are also hearing what appears to be a single gunshot. Backup officers arrive, and a contact team is organized by a sergeant using a ballistic shield to check on Grossel's well-being. At this time, the officers secured the pistol from Grossel and made the scene safe for medical personnel to approach. The Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office conducted an autopsy earlier today. The preliminary ruling for cause of death is suicide. Grossel also had two gunshot wounds. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Grossel also had two gunshots, likely from the officers, but neither would have resulted in his death. And I'll describe this a little bit further if you ask me. A friend had rented the room for Grossel a couple of weeks ago. The friend told detectives he recently warned Grossel, quote unquote, to get rid of his gun, to which he replied he was not going back to prison. Chief Brown was briefed on this incident earlier today. Questions?
Where are the gunshot wounds?
The gunshot wounds from, we believe to be those from the officer, are going to be in his upper torso, in his shoulder area.
His right shoulder?
I'm not sure which shoulder area. We have not, again, this is preliminary findings from the medical examiner. We have not gotten a diagram or anything of that nature. There were two gunshot wounds. Again, the medical examiner informs us that neither would have caused death. The suicide injury is a contact injury to the head.
Just to clarify, because I know you had to stop at one point, but they walk up, he leans forward, he has the gun, they step back, and then they exchange gunfire. Moments later, they see the single shot? Explain that.
Yeah, I'll go through that for you. He's seated in the driver's area. Both officers, again, Officer Jankowski is on the driver's side, which would have been Grossel's left, and Officer Herzeg is on his right, the passengers. This is all somewhat simultaneously. She observed him. She taps on the window to get his attention. She wants him to roll down the window so they can talk. There's some very dark. The windows on the truck, I failed to mention, are very dark tinted, and the windows are both up. He leans forward and sits back. When he sits back, he's looking at her, but she then realizes he has his gun pointed directly at Officer Jankowski. Officer Jankowski, at the same time, when that motion occurs, he sees the gun. He yells gun. Both officers retreat, and at the same time, they are drawing their weapons and they're defending themselves. So they felt that they were in imminent jeopardy, and they fired their weapons. They immediately went back to the back of their squad car and then took a cover position out of the line of fire.
Major,
Yeah, Eric.
When you had mentioned that, they saw the gun and it retreated and opened fire, is this normal when a gun is aimed at an officer? They don't bother saying, drop the gun. It's usually immediate exchange of fire.
When the weapon is drawn directly at the officers, the officers are going to perceive that as imminent danger, and they're going to feel that they're in a last resort scenario. All of these investigations are referred to the Dallas County Grand Jury, and that's where the standard of the Chapter 9, where you have a defense to prosecution or self-defense, is evaluated on the facts that are developed by the investigation. Yes, sir.
Major, was the suspect living at that hotel at this time?
He'd been there a couple of weeks. He had some addresses, obviously, in the Metroplex. He had lived in some suburbs and stuff like that. But recently he had been moving around, kind of hotel to hotel. Detectives did go into the hotel room, and they found some narcotics in the hotel room.
But Major,
One second, Jim. Go ahead, Steve.
The reporter used the term, the man drew his weapon and they responded.
Which reporter?
This gentleman just
Okay,
asked the
Eric.
question.
Okay, all right.
So I want to go back to what you all detail in terms of what the officer said he did once they noticed that weapon. Did he brandish the weapon?
That weapon was pointed directly at Officer Jankowski. Officer Herzeg felt that Officer Jankowski was in imminent danger. Officer Jankowski also responded he was in imminent danger. If I was able to show you the video, y'all would see somebody literally jumping backwards, up and back. So it's a human response to danger. I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
And at what point? So they retreat, return fire, and then moments later, there's a single gunshot in the cab, and that's...
I didn't break it down in the actual seconds. In the video, you can count the seconds. So there is once the officers return to the rear of the vehicle, there is a point where Jankowski reaches back through the driver's window. You can see his hand come out momentarily. Because of with the video, you really can't tell whether or not the pistol's in it or not, but he does reach back and point in the direction of the officers. And a few seconds later, and it could be as much as a half minute, 30 seconds later, there is, you see a flash in the cab of the truck. You see the brake lights illuminate on the truck, so, in theory, then his foot is on the brake pedal. And then, of course, the officers heard a simultaneous gunshot, so all that collectively at the same time. So as soon as there was no more activity, as the backup officers arrived, then they created that team, that contact team, and they went up there as quickly as they could to assess the situation and certainly get medical assistance.
Couple of more questions, guys, and that's it.
Major, I just wanted.
Yeah, Steve.
You've been in this profession for quite some time, and I know we're counting numbers here. I just want to get a sense if you've been able to gauge from people you work with in this department about the volume of police-involved shootings that you've had and what is defined as sort of a short amount of time, and the impact it's had on the people who do this job every day.
Police officers come to work every day. When you come to this profession, you come to help individuals. You know that there's a risk associated with this job, and that's what you sign on for. So we're still coming to work. There's risk associated with that. We train to have the most possible or the best possible outcomes on these things. Every police officer in the Dallas Police Department values human life. That's what we do, and so you blend all in and we do our job.
So bottom line, this was suicide by cop.
I don't know, Jim.
at this point,
I don't know. I think that we'll let the investigation continue, and we haven't drawn that conclusion. You guys were asking earlier about numbers.